Hey everybody, welcome back to another week of Life's Worth Living podcast, and I'm your host, John Gossett. Thanks for coming back for another week and another episode. We're so grateful for you guys coming back every week and watching our numbers go up, and more people are aware of it and watching it. So we'd like to thank our sponsors. Tonight we'd like to thank GTM Builders for allowing us this beautiful space to record in, where we have the privacy and quiet to do this show. And GTM, if you're thinking about building, check them out at gtmbuilders.com or visit one of their 4 model homes in the Tooele Valley. As you know, we've mentioned it before, Tooele Valley is the 7th fastest growing county in North America for the 2nd year in a row. So come out and check it out. They're building everywhere, and GTM builds a beautiful home, and so we appreciate them very much. Tonight's episode is brought to you by A. Warner Homes Real Estate. If you're thinking about buying or selling, reach out to A. Warner Homes Real Estate or give them a call at 801-867-5078. And got to mention these guys especially tonight, Comfort Inn and Suites, for making this possible tonight. They are housing my guest tonight, and they've got a beautiful hotel. And so if you're having family come in to the Tooele Valley and you don't want them staying at your house, put them in a hotel. So give them a call at 801-250-3600. It's a beautiful hotel right in Lake Point as you get off I-80. So check them out. But I'm really excited tonight. I've got a guest that's driven all the way into Tooele County for this episode, so I appreciate you coming in. And our guest tonight is Julie Lee, the author. She just put out a new book called I See You, How Compassion and Connection Saves Lives. And so, Julie, thanks for coming out and being part of this.
You're welcome. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited you came. I would have been all by myself trying to explain your book. So
we don't want that.
No. We want it to sell, not for me to screw something up. So no, thank you for coming out. So kind of back us up and tell us a little bit about you before we get into the book.
Yeah. I am married. My husband's name is Rob. We've been married 10 years, and we have 2 children. Samuel, he's 5, and Lydia is 4.
Nice.
And we love them so much. They're both miracle babies in their own way. Our son was an in vitro baby, and then our little girl is like a 1 in a million miracle that I got pregnant 9 months later. And we've never had more children since, and we just super love being parents. I host a podcast called I See You that I started a little over 2 years ago. And yeah, I received a contract to write this book just earlier this year, and I am very passionate about this idea that compassion and connection save lives. Because I experienced that for myself, not from far away, but really close up in my own life. Through my 20s, I began struggling with severe debilitating anxiety and depression and PTSD-like symptoms, the nightmares, the flashbacks. And I can say without a doubt that it was the compassion and connection of other people sitting with me in that uncomfortable space that saved my life multiple times. So I love everything that your foundation does and everything you stand for. I think it's so needed, and I'm just happy to be a part of it. I'm honored to be here.
Well, I appreciate you coming out. So you didn't have any of the anxiety in your teenage years. It just kind of came out in your 20s.
Yeah. So I grew up in a home where my dad was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Uh-huh. And so that created some different experiences for me growing up. And because of that, when I left my home and went to college, at Brigham Young University, I was very excited to start my own home and life free from any of those words: depression, anxiety, panic attacks. Those are all really difficult words that carried a lot of weight for me. And when I met my husband on one of our first dates, I interrogated him. I was like, listen, if you have any mental health history, we got to get this out now, because we're going to have to break up. I can't do this anymore. I'm going to have a home that's free of that. And lucky for him, he did not. He has other issues. Those are not them. And it wasn't, it was about 1.5 years into our marriage, I had my first panic attack. And so you can understand, probably with the context of where I came from, my background, you can understand why the first time I had a panic attack, I was certain my life was over. It was over, and I was about to cause indescribable pain to my family that I was creating. And it was really tough for many years to feel love for myself when I struggled with the thing that I had hated so much and watched really have a lot of catastrophic effects on a family.
Yeah.
And really impact me a lot as a kid. It was really hard.
Now, is that anything you can talk about? Some of the things that, tell me what, kind of go into a little bit more detail.
Tell me about what?
Growing up with a dad with bipolar disorder, I mean, what things you saw? I mean, is that something you're comfortable talking about?
I hope so. I write about it a little in my book. So,
right.
Yeah, no, of course. So my dad... bipolar disorder looks different for everybody, right? Mm-hmm. And my dad's definitely swung more towards the depression, so the mania was not as high as some of the things you might hear about on TV and see. He really, really had bad depressive episodes that left him for years unable to work and in bed every day. I remember one job he was off on Thursdays, and I knew not to be home on Thursdays, not because I adored my dad and I respected him greatly, but there was definitely a pretty down feeling in the home because he spent those days in bed with the blinds closed, and that was really challenging to be around. And so those were days that I tried to be at my friend's house. I did when I was 5 years old. The most traumatic thing that I can describe that I remember so vividly was when I was 5 and I came home from kindergarten and I had one of those puppets on my hand that I'd made with a little like brown sack lunch bag. And I was so excited. And I can't remember what the animal was, but I was so excited to go show my dad. I remember he was not working at the time and he was in bed. And I remember going into his room and he was laying on the bed staring at the ceiling, but he wasn't blinking. He wasn't moving. And I didn't know then what was going on, and I tried to get on the bed and I tried to like talk to him, and I was like making funny faces as a 5-year-old, and I was just so confused about why he wasn't responding. He wasn't even blinking. Now later on, with the knowledge I have, I know that he was in a catatonic state from such severe depression, which can happen when depression is really severe and your body just kind of shuts down. You're alive and you're breathing, but you're not mentally there at all. I'm lucky because I think in some ways because of my age, as startling of a memory as that is and how I've had to work through that, because I wasn't old enough like some of my siblings to think that maybe he was dead. That didn't even occur to me, but I had siblings who did, and that was a really terrifying experience for him. It lasted about 30 minutes. And so he has been through a lot at a time when mental illness was not talked about very much. And so our family, we didn't talk to people about it. And I think that in some ways that was probably what was most harmful, is because that was my reality as a kid. I never saw my dad well. And so that was all I knew. And in some ways that was challenging when I left my home and when I married someone else and I saw other families. There was definitely a mourning process that I've gone through to see how things can be. And, we all have our own things. There are people that have been through horrific things, good people, and we just got to love each other. We got to see each other, because you just never know what someone else is going through or what's going on behind closed doors, Yeah. But man, my parents tried. They loved us so much, and they still do, I believe. They did the absolute best they could with the hand they were dealt, I think. Yeah. And they both also suffered a lot. And I try to be real careful to keep it to my story, because I have 6 siblings. There's 7 of us, and we all have completely different stories. We had different experiences. For my oldest sister that was 14 during that time and totally aware, that was a really different experience for her, kind of leading the pack of us kids. And I was the youngest at the time. There was a baby brother born 8 years after me, so there was a gap there. I was the youngest, and I was very in it. It was my normal. I really took my parents' emotions upon myself and wanted to make them happy. I did not have that contrast of what was normal and what wasn't. And there are some really harmful things that have come because of that. But man, I sure love my family, and I'm really especially proud of the lives that me and my siblings have now, and some of the chains we've broken.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, we talk a lot on this podcast about, your past doesn't define your future, and that you can break those chains. And, looking back on it, you probably You'd have to tell me, but I mean, looking back on that, because the era and the time, people didn't talk about, there was so much stigma, they kept it to themselves. A lot of the time, people didn't seek any medical help either.
Right.
So was that kind of the situation that he didn't really go?
No, actually, my parents did. That was what was challenging, is he never found a medication that worked for him.
Just never got it dialed in.
So you can imagine living with bipolar, not medicated. It took a lot to keep him here.
Oh, yeah.
And it was, he was suicidal at many points and made a lot of different plans and things. And I honor that he stayed.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for that, because he didn't find medication that worked for him. He has now,
Good.
Recently actually, but that was not something that he found available to him.
Yeah.
So.
And it's tough. It's too bad medication isn't such that they say, oh, yeah, bipolar disorder, this will fix it, and slide you a prescription. But it's so much trial and error.
And it's been that way for me too. Yeah.
What works for one doesn't necessarily work for another. So they'll start you out and let you ride a prescription for a minute.
And it takes a while for it to kick in. I have been through that many times.
Yeah.
And when you are just hanging on by your fingernails, 6 weeks is a really long time to see if something's going to work. It's tough.
It is.
It's tough. It's a day at a time, an hour at a time.
Well, and for your dad, that's a win. It's a win that he's still here, and he's still, and now sounds like they've dialed it in a little bit and got him where he's probably feeling a little bit better.
Yeah,
so
he feels a lot
that's
better.
amazing, because so many people can't get to that point and give up, and you can understand. I mean, how hard that is to be born with mental illness or something that you have to work on every day. I mean, nobody wants that. It just is hard.
It just is. It just is hard, period. Yeah.
So you end up going to BYU, and tell me how this came about with you, your anxiety.
My mental health struggles. Yeah. So I went to Texas, actually, Houston, Texas, for a student teaching experience. And I was married at this point. We'd been married a little over a year. And my husband I guess we'd been married almost 2 years. And my husband was doing an internship out there with a big firm called Ernst & Young. And I started working at this school, and the school itself was really a tough school. It was kind of in a ghetto neighborhood. There was a dead dog in the street the first day I drove up, garbage everywhere. These kids lived some rough lives. And it was an elementary school, K through 4, I believe. And so it was kind of a hard environment in general, but that wasn't, I mean, I'm a pretty bright, bubbly, happy person. I was excited to be an influence there. But I worked with a mentor teacher that did not know I was coming. I showed up and she had no idea who I was. She did not know I was there. And I'm like, I just drove, 2 days straight to get here. She wasn't aware that I was coming. And I don't know how that mix-up happened, but she was dealing with her own stuff, I think. And she did not like me very much at all. And that was hard for me to swallow, because I think everyone should like me.
Right.
I think I'm a pretty friendly, nice person, and I love people. And so I worked and worked to get that woman to like me. And I just have to believe that she had other stuff going on. She'd worked at a really hard school for a really long time, and I think that it was showing.
Yeah.
And she was pretty worn down, and she was not happy to have an eager new teacher in her classroom, making connections with the kids, working with the kids, having the kids like her. It was not something that she was not excited to have me there.
And so how long were you there?
So I was only there 5 weeks before I had my first panic attack.
Gotcha. And
that day before I had it, I remember I held off. I was feeling it coming on, whatever it was. I wouldn't have called it that, because that was, depression and anxiety was not something I would ever struggle with. Mm-hmm. But I remember that day I couldn't sleep the night before, and it was my husband's birthday. And so I remember I was just trying to keep it together for his birthday. And I remember he had just gotten his acceptance letter to Notre Dame for his master's degree. So many good things to celebrate. And I did not want to ruin that. And I remember that day, the day after his birthday, being at the school and going in the bathroom stall and just trying to keep myself from vomiting. I hadn't slept at all the night before, and I was shaking and crying. And I just couldn't do it anymore. Mm-hmm. because I just, every day when I would go to teach, she would stand in the back of the classroom with her arms folded and just glare at me the whole time. And I was apart from anything I knew. I was away from my school, my family, working really long hours because it was a super long commute into the city too. And, it was interesting. Those first couple weeks, I would come home and tell my husband about it, and we would laugh about it. We'd just be like, this is crazy. She's crazy. This is one of those things we're doing. And it was like I stopped laughing less and less, and it was starting to get to me.
Just wear you down.
It was starting to wear me down. And now, having, a better understanding of boundaries and doing a lot of childhood trauma therapy, now I look at that and I see, holy cow, like I was way past my emotional bank account. Like we were way strung out. We weren't sleeping, so many things. But I'm a hard worker, and I didn't quit things, and I made people like me, and I was sure I could do that. And I wanted to be an impact at this school. This is what I'd wanted.
Yeah.
But I worked myself into a complete mental breakdown. Yep. And that was my first experience with that psychological battle that I was going to fight.
And so how did you approach that? I mean, you have the breakdown.
Yeah.
And where do you take it?
I think we had some religious leaders come to our home. I called my mentor at my school, and I remember just getting on the phone, and I just started crying, and she just said, what happened to you out there? Because I just sounded so different. I was this confident, bubbly, outgoing. I'd worked in an elementary school doing reading recovery all through college. And so for my age, I had quite a bit of experience in the classroom and handling classroom. I'd, substitute taught since I was 19. And I was incapable of tying my shoes. I was a completely different human being. And she immediately said, you need to stop. I don't want you communicating with that woman again. We will handle this. I'm going to bring you home, and we're going to have you student teach in a really safe classroom, and we're going to get you back on your feet. But you're not going back to that school. We're not doing this. And because she knew me so well, she'd worked with me, she'd been a professor, and she knew that this is not normal, and I know this girl, and something has happened here that's wrong. So the idea was that I would wait a couple months, and then when my husband's internship, we would go back, and I was just going to stay at home. And my sister was like, hey, this new show just came out, Downton Abbey. This is exactly what you need. And I remember I started watching Downton Abbey, and it would give me panic attacks. It was too hard. Downton Abbey I'd hear about someone dying in it, and it would send me spiraling. I could not even handle that. And so it only took a week before we realized that I couldn't be by myself at the house every day. There was someone in my religious congregation that I had been referred to that handled counseling, and they had me call and do a counseling appointment with him. And, he was saying, put your worries in a box and set them, and he had these nice tips. And I didn't know, my husband didn't know, none of us knew that what we were going to start dealing with was much more severe and deep than that. It was a lot more similar to PTSD. Oh. But that was not triggered until I was 21.
Gotcha.
So, from the years to come, the next couple years, I was in and out of therapy, on and off meds, talking about the student teaching experience, trying to work it out. And I just was like, I wasn't getting anywhere. I was like, I'm kind of okay. I'm not. It wasn't until I got into a therapist that happened to specialize in childhood trauma that she started picking up on things and started asking questions. And I remember her saying to me, I need you to tell me something about your parents, and don't follow it up with, but I love them so much. They're the best. I know you love your parents. Can you just tell me what happened? And I was hard.
Bad.
It was hard because I was fiercely loyal to them.
Yeah, you don't want to dishonor them by saying,
no,
hey, this is where I'm at. No.
I still don't want to, and I still know that it causes them pain to know that things weren't perfect.
Yeah.
And they aren't for any of our kids, right?
No.
But they tried so hard. I think it's hard for them to see that their kids have pain. And it's not something we ever talked about before me. We talked about the bipolar disorder. We talked about the mental illness. In some ways, I feel like our lives revolved around that, like the sun. But as far as what we as the pain that the kids experienced, I didn't share that with my parents. I don't think any of us did. I mean, when you're worried about your dad killing himself and mom is just holding on, that's not the kind of concerns you bring to your parents.
No.
You know?
But did you kids talk about it amongst each other, or did you kind of just keep it to yourselves?
As I became an adult, we started talking more.
But in the middle of it, not so much?
No.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they did as much. I was pretty young.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. That was normal.
Yeah.
That was normal, you know?
And
And there were a lot of good times, you know? We went camping to Goblin Valley almost every year, and I love that. I just took my family for the first time. Like,
fun.
There were good times because my parents have great hearts.
Yeah.
But it also, I can hold that in one hand, and I also experienced some trauma that has greatly affected me as an adult.
Yeah.
And I can hold both of those. And I couldn't always do that. I didn't understand how to do that, but I can.
And that helps, I'm sure.
Yeah.
To be able to keep that separated.
Yeah.
And I think everybody comes with their own challenges and their own baggage, right?
Yeah.
And I think we all do the best we can with what we've been given, but some of us have been given a little bit tougher road. And we work with a lot of people that struggle with mental illness and those types of challenges. And the sad thing is, when you look at that group, and the statistics that we talk about all the time are, you take 5 people with mental health challenges, only 2 of them seek actual doctors to care for it. Get the medical advice from a doctor. That leaves the other 3 to self-medicate, and that generally doesn't go well either. So,
Right.
So I think the more that we talk about those types of things, the more that we reduce the stigma, and hopefully people are not afraid to, every family's got some mental illness, and then go to a family reunion, hang out for a minute, right?
Oh, yeah, especially now. I mean, and what you do in suicide prevention work, suicide is everyone's problem now. Yeah. Like, we're long past the days of where, we just shouldn't talk about it. It's affecting every single family, every race, every sexual orientation, every age group. Yeah. It is everyone's problem now. And so for people that, they wish we would stop talking about it, I get it. It's not, I remember you saying this on the interview that you sent me that you did. You're a happy guy, right? Like, you like talking about fun, happy things.
I'm a fun guy. I don't know how I ended up in this.
You know what? I say that all the time on interviews. I'm always like, I'm a lot of fun. I want you to know. Like, we're talking about some heavy, deep stuff, but I'm a good time. I was not ever going to be depressed or anxious. Like, of all of my siblings, most of my siblings have told me, you were the one we least would have expected to have a problem with this, right?
Yeah.
But I just think, I understand why people don't want to talk about it, but I just think we're long past that.
Yeah, for sure. And if we don't talk about it, the stigma remains. I mean, it really does. Same thing with suicide. If we don't talk about it, and it's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
And the more you shun the conversation, the more you don't see the person, right? Because you're like, don't want to talk about it.
Because you don't want to talk about it. And I think that there were some maybe false beliefs about that if we talk about it, it's going to happen. People are going to see it as an option. Yep. And I think there's been enough study and research to see that's not the way to handle it. No. I know for me, all negative thoughts that I can talk about, that's why I live a very transparent life now. I don't have any secrecy. And in some ways I can be an overshare. Maybe I'm not private enough sometimes, but it's because I'm not going to live like that anymore, because it almost killed me from the inside out. That's how I lived growing up, and that did not take me to a good place. And I have stewardship over my own family, over my 2 little kids, and I love my husband, and I'm going to do things different in my own home, and I want to be happy. And apparently that also includes a pretty strong tendency towards anxiety and depression. So I'm going to make my own way with that. Yeah. And that means talking about it as a real thing, and it means I take medication and I go to a therapist, and man, I love those things. Yeah. I'm so grateful for the drug that helps me to stay level. So grateful. And it's sad to me that was ever a hard thing. And that's okay, but man, it's not anymore. But
you think about it, if you broke your arm, you'd go to the ER, right? You'd get a cast. They would take care of that. Why not if you have sickness in your brain, why not find out what they can do to fix that?
Totally.
Because, it's not a crutch. It is just...
Oh, I can say, at least from my own firsthand experience, I always heard things about antidepressants, like they can make you a zombie and stuff. And I know for some people they can. In my experience, what an antidepressant does is it makes me see reality. So I like to think of it like a basement trap, a trap basement door, where when I have a really bad day and say, like, I have a sister who's dying from cancer right now. I have another sister that had cancer. My parents got divorced a couple years ago. These kind of events that are going to happen in my life, when I'm on medication, it's like I fall on the kitchen floor, but I can still look around and see that there's like sunlight outside. Like, maybe tomorrow will be better. Like, I feel like crap today. Today sucks, but I think that tomorrow could be better.
Yeah.
When I'm not on meds, it's like I go through this trap door and it shuts up above me, and all I see around me is dark. And it feels like I've never been happy. I've never been happy, and I will never be happy again. It's like seeing in black and white, and then an antidepressant is like someone turns on the light and I can see in color. And all of a sudden it's like, I want to like grab people and be like, wait, do you know, like, we can get over hard days.
Yeah.
Like, we can. I think that's living normal and in reality, but the problem with depression is you think that's reality. You think that's the real you. I didn't want to take medicine because I thought, nope, I got to figure this out. This is how I feel. This is the real me. That's just trying to cover up what's really going on. That's a lie.
Yeah.
That's a lie from depression. That's not the real you. I mean, babies smile when they see people. We are so instinctually driven to just be happy, simply. That depression, dark stuff that goes on that you can't get out of on your own, that's not the real us.
So what helped you the most in your recovery of that?
That's a good question. A lot of things help me a lot. I do hold myself to a standard of that I need to get some good exercise, at least a few times a week. I shoot for every day, but I'm learning to be more flexible with that. I have time every day that I connect with my higher power. I meditate. Those two are minimums for me, personally. And there are other things that really help me. It really helps me to have an orderly home. So there's these little things, but I found those two, especially the physical health and the spiritual health. I'm usually on top of the world if I'm getting that done.
Yeah.
But when my self-care starts slipping, I start slipping. Even on medication, I start slipping. I mean, I experienced it just this last week where, I had like 3 days in a row where it's like I'm eating brownies for lunch and I'm not taking care of myself.
You say that like that's a bad thing.
I know, it's pretty great once in a while, but when you do it multiple days and I'm like, I haven't exercised in 4 days and I'm not getting that like that like anxiety out and the endorphins, I'm like, and I'm staying up till 1 a.m. every night, I can't slip into those habits like some people can.
Yeah.
But the good news with that is because I know that I can't, I live a pretty awesome life because I have to develop these good habits. And it's not a bad gig. I mean, it's not bad to do those things every day. It's a pretty high quality of life that I get to live.
Yeah, absolutely. So the one thing that made me think, do you think the things that you mentioned are all things you can control?
Yes.
Where when you look at your childhood, there was so much that you couldn't control.
Yes.
Do you think that has something to do with it?
I'm sure 100% it does.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I really like being able to have a nice, clean home and put on nice piano music and have a lot of calmness and clarity and order.
Yeah.
It's real important to me, and it makes me feel very in control. And I think that even that, there are times when I've had to step back and say, okay, it's okay that the house is a disaster right now. It's not easy for me. My mind starts struggling when things are chaotic outside of my body, but I'm learning a balance with that as well. And I'm learning to say to myself, no, you're not, this does not mean you will get depressed tomorrow. But because I watched how much that hurt my family growing up, I do tend to hold myself to a pretty high standard of I will not use this as an excuse, and my family will not suffer, and I will take care of this. There are times when I've had to learn a little bit more about myself, need to tune up on my self-compassion because of that.
Gotcha.
You know, because I get in that perfectionist mode where, nope, this isn't going to affect my marriage. It's not going to affect my kids. I will not, you know, I will take care of this. And I will get up at 5:30 every morning. I work out, like, I'm a hard driven person, but nobody can stay like that forever. And so that's where I'm learning that balance of, and I'm in it right now. I'm still learning it. Yeah. Where, you know, when I was writing my book, we were eating a lot of frozen pizza, and, you know, I was missing my exercise a little bit more, and I had to have those conversations with myself constantly of, this time period is not forever, and also nobody can be held to that standard forever. And there are times when the best thing for my life is to sit up and watch a show with my husband till 1 a.m. and eat junk food, and that's really good for our marriage. I love it. I had a professor named Brad Wilcox, and he taught an elementary education class in literature. And so it was a class of like 20 girls. And so I say girls, there are men in elementary education, but there was not in that class. There are a little more few. But I remember an analogy he gave that has always stuck with me. I remember he said, every day for me is juggling balls. And he said, every morning I have to pray, you know, I have my religious leadership, I have my writing, I'm a professor, I'm a father, I'm all of these different things. And every single day of my life, I'm just praying to know which balls it's okay to drop that day, because every day balls drop. Yeah. And knowing today can my marriage, you know, is it okay that I don't see my wife today because I'm going to go and help this family do this, or I need to help a student do this. But then there are days when I know I can't drop my marriage today. Like today. And then my current therapist, I was talking to her about how much I love this analogy, and she's like, you know what I love to add on to that is maybe we say which balls are made of glass and which are made of rubber today. There are some balls that'll bounce up. Like my marriage, we're good. My spouse understands today that I'm not going to be home on time. We're going to bounce. We're good. And there are other days when it may be, my marriage is kind of feeling like glass and we need this time together. And that is really helping me to continue that, because the more that I'm a really present mother, and it's a very healing experience for me to be super present with my kids and to really just raise them in love and self-compassion, and maybe give them a few of the things that I think would have helped, you know, 6-year-old Julie, right? Yeah. And that's been a really healing experience for me. I'm also so driven in the work that I'm doing with my ICU mission, and I feel that strongly in me that I want to do that. And so I have to figure out, how am I doing both? Because I'm not giving up either. I'm not giving up that present one-on-one time with my kids every single day, and I'm also not going to give up this thing that I'm doing and trying to help save lives like you do, and to help people feel seen. And so I choose to be a juggler, right? I choose to do that. And I choose to, there are days when exercise has to drop, or, you know, maybe I'm not going to make it to my kids' thing that day, but man, are we going to do stuff over the weekend? They're going to know that their mom loves them a lot.
Yeah, and I was going to say, nobody expects perfection, so.
But the problem is sometimes I do, right? Of no one else, right? We all do that sometimes, but we're
always hardest on ourselves.
Yeah. So I'm going for which ones are rubber, which ones are glass.
I like that. Yeah. I really do. I like that. So you come out of that, and what kind of led you up to this? I mean, I know that you were asked to write the book and everything, but what kind of led you into that direction? Because did the podcast come before the anything with the book?
Yes.
So what led you to the podcast? What led you to want to fill that space?
Well, I knew I was doing assemblies for kids. I wrote a children's book called Broccoli Punzel, and it's a fairy tale about self-acceptance. So I'd go talk to kids about self-acceptance. That started in August of 2017. And then the following year, I just had some inspiration, and I met a friend through a mutual therapist. Not our mutual therapist. And there's a different story to that. But we met at a park for the first time. And we just connected instantly. She'd been through very different experiences than me, but she was dealing with the same, like, I'm good my whole life, I'm a happy, outgoing person, and then she started struggling with some pretty severe anxiety and depression as an adult. And it was consistent, it was chronic. And so our therapist, in a very like HIPAA approved way, had like asked one of us, can I give them your blog? And then you guys, you know, if you happen to get in touch, I'm not a part of this, but I think you two would get along really well. You're both really driven and have some of the same feelings about these things we talk about. So I met her at a park and we just became instant friends. Her name's Brittany Coyato and she's the best. I love her. She really saw me, and she was someone I could say, you know, we're sitting at the park and I'm like, okay, so talk to me about suicide ideations. What does this mean? What do I do with this? What does it mean about me as a person? Like, we got down to nitty gritty real quick. And we've been, I almost said we've been married about a year. No, we had been friends about a year. And she gave me something, and I wish I had it. I have my ICU bracelet, but she gave me a different bracelet, and it said ICU on it. And she talked to me about the meaning of this. She'd been to an Idina Menzel concert. Idina Menzel's a really big deal, right? She's the voice of Frozen. She's in Rent. She's Elphaba in Wicked. She has a song called ICU, and it's some of the lyrics are in my book, but it's like, to the brokenhearted, to the, you know, almost forgotten, I see you. And Brittany gave me this bracelet. She'd bought one from the concert, and then she had one made like on Etsy for me. And she talked about how it's a reminder for her of that she's seen by her higher power. You know, when she's sitting in that religious lesson and something said that's just triggering and doesn't align with her experiences, she looks at it and she's like, God sees me. He knows me. He knows my heart. And so she talked about how she wanted this to be a reminder for me that like, she sees me. And we can text each other and say, oh my gosh, this just happened at the store. That, you know, it doesn't have to do with depression, anxiety even. And we just be like, girl, I see you. I got you. I see you. I know you. I know your heart. And I witness your life. And because of that, with the book, we marketed a bracelet too, an ICU bracelet, which I'm wearing right now. It's a magnetic bracelet.
I like it.
And it's to be a safe place for people. Mm-hmm. To be a safe place that I see you as a human being that has struggles that I don't know about. John, I'm sure you have struggles that I don't know about. And I think you're important and you're special, and I think we're all equal. And I see you, you know, as more than the political party you're with, as more than, you know, whether or not you're wearing a mask, I see you. And those words were very powerful for me. And that I felt really inspired with the podcast that's what it should be called. And then when I met with the president of Cedar Fort and we talked about the book, that's what they also thought probably the book should be called, is I See You.
Yeah.
And those words mean a lot to me, and they carry a lot of meaning. There's also Avatar. Have you seen Avatar?
No, and we were talking about this with my kids the other night. They're like, really? You never watched it? And I'm like, no, I haven't seen Star Wars either.
Oh my gosh.
No, I need to get out more.
Well, you've done a few other things in the meantime. No, but on Avatar, they say that almost as a greeting. I see you. I talk about that in the introduction of my book. And it's just this totally like spiritual thing of I see you. And it's, yeah, you just got to go watch Avatar. But it's pretty special.
Well, what I liked about this, so I'll tell you what my wife and I worked in addiction recovery. Mm-hmm. And in addiction recovery, they say connection is what everybody craves, connection.
And don't they say compassion or connection is the antidote to addiction or something like that? Yeah,
it's the opposite of addiction. And so everybody thinks it's sobriety, but it's connection, and connection's what heals. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because we talk in prevention that prevention is prevention, right? So if you're preventing underage drinking, if you're preventing suicide, if you're preventing, this connection shows up across every one of them.
Yes.
And I loved the fact, the compassion component, but the connection. We all crave connection. We all want to be noticed. We all want to be made to feel special.
Yes.
And that we matter. And that's just kind of the human condition. We all have that feeling. But there was a, are you familiar with Kevin Hines?
No.
So Kevin Hines, and I've told this story a number of times, but Kevin Hines, we met a few years back, and he was one of the only people that has jumped from the Golden Gate Bridge. Do you know who I'm talking about now?
Well, I have an interview on my podcast with Brad Wilcox, and I'm pretty sure he talked about this.
Yes. And so Kevin Hines actually jumped from the Golden Gate Bridge, but he struggled with bipolar disorder. Mm-hmm. got up, he told his dad goodbye in the morning, gave him a kiss, left the house,
Yeah.
got on the bus. And he just kept feeling like, hey, I need to die. I need to die today. And he kept hearing those voices, and it was scaring him. And so he's making these deals with God that, hey, if somebody notices me today, if someone will just notice me, I will not kill myself today. So he gets on this bus, and he's headed to the Golden Gate Bridge, got tears streaming down his face, and he's obviously in crisis, and he's made this deal with himself. If somebody notices me, I won't do it. And on the bus, these two old guys were sitting together, and the one guy goes to the other guy, kind of gives him the elbow and says, what the hell's his problem? That's the only comment. So then it gets him even more upset.
Yeah.
He gets to the Golden Gate Bridge, and he walks along the walking path that goes across the bridge. And as he walks across it, he's like, nobody sees me. Nobody knows what I'm going through. Nobody cares. The world would be better off without me. Nobody would notice if I was gone. They feel invisible, right? And that's a component in suicide prevention. People feel invisible, that they don't matter.
They don't feel seen.
They don't feel seen. And he finally hears this voice, and it's a German lady. And she goes, excuse me, would you take my picture? That's my German. You like that? Might have sounded like Spanish, but whatever. She says, would you take my picture? And he turns around, tears streaming down his face, says, yeah, I'll take your picture. Takes her picture, hands her back the camera, grabs the railing, and throws himself off the bridge. And over 2,000 people have done that at the Golden Gate Bridge. Only a handful have lived. Well, I think there's in the teens that have lived. Only a handful actually can walk, and Kevin is one of those. And so that story's always been in my mind for the years that we've been working in suicide prevention. And so when I saw your podcast, I was like, I have to listen. So I've listened for quite a while. And I just love the fact that it says it all for me on the front of the book. Yeah, I see you. And that connection and compassion component. It's like, you know what? This is what we need right now. And we talked a little bit prior to recording, like, what a crappy time to have to put out a book, right?
Yeah.
In the middle of COVID. But
I mean, my book launch party, 20 people total, and most of those were family.
But you know what? Here's my thought. Everybody's at home.
Yep.
People are working from home. Hopefully they're listening to more podcasts.
It's a much less glorious way to put out a book. Yeah. It's also super needed right now. And if I have to choose, that's what I want.
I was going to say, you want to have those big...
Well, it's fun it's like a rite of passage. It's fun to celebrate and do those things like we normally do. But that I have to believe. I mean, I wrote the majority of this manuscript in February, right before COVID.
It was meant to be here at this time.
I hope so.
I really believe it. And there's not been a time when I think more people... There are people that isolated on purpose prior to COVID.
Right.
But now so many of us are isolated and not wanting to be there.
Yep.
And people people need to be seen.
Yep.
I was saying something to someone the other day. Make people feel special. Go out of your way right now. You can do it even if we're not in person.
Yes.
There's ways to give somebody that boost and let them know that they still matter and that you miss them and everything. So tell me about the book, how this came about.
So the president of the publishing company, he just added me on Facebook. And I was like, well, that's random. And I just decided that I'd take it as a sign. About 2 weeks before that, I had written an introduction to a book called I See You. And it's like I'd woken up at 5:30 in the morning, and I just kind of had it in my brain, and I got it out in a Google Doc, and then I was just like, well, that's weird, because I don't even really want to write a book. And I set aside, this is in January of this year. And so I messaged the president of Cedar Fort, hey, thanks for adding me. I have a children's book that I've thought about getting officially published through a publishing company. I'd love to pick your brain sometime. And he was like, yeah, why don't you come to my office next week? And I was like, oh, he actually said yes. Crap, now I have to go. So I took my book, and then just kind of as an afterthought, I'm like, I'm just going to print off the intro, and I'll just slip it in my purse, and I'm probably not even going to bring it out because I haven't even grammar checked it, And I went and we talked a little bit about my children's book, and then it was like something in me was like, and I have an introduction to a book. And it was a crazy time. I had a niece that was dying in a hospital. Like, I was on the phone about that right before the meeting and right after. So I'm just like, this is like not an emotionally good time to all of a sudden just be like, also here's an intro to a book that maybe I don't even want to write, but I just feel like I should give it to you. But he did. And, you know, he was like, so is this book written? And I'm like, nope, it's not. And he's like, do you have a table of contents? And I'm like, nope. He's like, can you get it to me by the end of the day? And I said, yes, I will. And he's like, I'm not even going to read this until you get me a table of contents. So I said, okay. You know, so I went back and I go to my sister-in-law's house and I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I done? We have to figure this out. You know, and I'm writing on scrap paper. And anyways, that night I sent him a table of contents. And they had told me, you know, then if we like that, we'll have you write a chapter. And then we'll read the chapter and see if we want you to do the book. They didn't even have me write a chapter. They just 2 weeks later sent me a contract and said, can you have it done by June 30th? And I said, or no, June 1st. That's right. Because my birthday's May 31st. And I was like, that sucks. No, so I had it done like the 30th. I was
so
like,
the crunch period is on your birthday.
Yeah. I was going out of town actually. So I think I had it done like the 29th or something. But so they sent me a contract. And so I did it in 3.5 months. I wrote this book. And COVID hit right then, so my kids couldn't go anywhere to be babysat. So we did it. We did it, and it was a lot of like laying on the ground begging for help from God before I wrote every time, because I just needed angels to help me, because frankly, I don't have a degree in writing, but I got a lot of help, and I'm really proud of my book. And I think it's well written. I think it's important, and I used to feel so prideful to say something like that until I understood that I'm getting help from other places.
Yeah.
So I can say that.
It's when you wake up at 5:30 and write a introduction, you know it's coming from somewhere,
It's
right?
coming from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And you can, a lot of people have different ideas of where that might be, but there's something out there that's watching over us for sure.
Oh, 100%.
Can't deny that. So
you end up having the foreword by Tim Ballard from Operation Underground Railroad. That's pretty cool.
I think so. I'm like kind of a mega fan, so I'm pretty happy about it. Yeah.
That's amazing. So tell me how that came about.
So I spoke at a conference in San Diego, and the man that helped him start OUR has listened to my podcast and likes it, and I got to meet him there.
Oh, way cool.
And so we just kind of started a relationship. So when I got this contract, I was like, because I don't know how many times I've watched Operation Tucson, and which is such a bizarre thing as like a 30-year-old girl to sit there and watch this documentary over and over again all about sex, slavery, of kids. But I'm just so inspired because sometimes you feel crazy when you want to do these big things with your life. And sometimes you see people who are doing it and you're like, no, I do want to help. I do, I can't sit by anymore. And Tim has been a big inspiration to me with what he's chosen to do with his skills and what I feel like are his God-given gifts. So when I got this, I actually had some other networking things where, according to Instagram, they have more followers and things, but I just thought, I'm going to ask, what's the worst that happens? I'll get a no. Yeah. So I called my friend who helped him start the foundation, and I told him about the contract I got, and he's like, that's amazing. This will be great. And I'm like, it'd be super cool if there was a Ford. And he's like, totally. And I could tell he knew where I was going. I was like, and I was thinking about our buddy Tim. What do you think? You think he'd do it? And he's like, totally. I'm like, really? And he's like, oh yeah, we'll make it happen. He'll want to do it. I'm like, I don't think he knows who I am is the anyways, but he wrote it for the book, and I'm super grateful for that, and I love everything he does, and he's pretty busy doing some pretty cool things in the world, so I'm just honored to have his name on the book,
Yeah, that's way cool. So kind of give me a little bit of an overview. Tell people what they're going to find in this book.
Well, can I look at it?
Okay, yeah, do you need to?
I worked really hard for 3.5 months on it, and then I did the audiobook too.
She's not leaving here till she signs my book too.
Oh yeah. I feel a little bit like a fraud too. I'm still learning that it's cool to sign a book. It's fun. No, so there's 6 parts in it. And the first part is the rallying cry, and so this is just kind of like what this is all about. And then part 2 is saving yourself first, because I truly don't believe you can't see other people in the best way and the most the way with the most integrity if you can't do it for yourself. If you can't practice what you preach for yourself, you're never going to be able to do that 100% honestly for other people because you don't believe it for yourself. And I've learned that from my own experience. Part 3 is who they need. So it's all about us and the gifts we have, and talk about what makes you different, makes you powerful, and how you can use those things to help save. Part 4 is tools to see. So, I mean, there's finding funny, slowing down, loving with intensity, boundaries, we can't fix it. Part 5, looking closer. This is where I really dive deep into what I like to call black and white thinking and overcoming black and white thinking, what it means to see in color and in high definition thinking. I talk a little to even Black Lives Matter. I talk a little to gender equality and what that actually looks like to me, what it means and what it doesn't mean, and how we can see each other in those ways that are kind of controversial and hot topics. And I knew it was a risk to write about that in my book, but I believe this is truth, what I chose to write. Doesn't mean I know everything about it, but I feel like what I wrote is true. And then part 6 is why it matters. And that's where I go into a little bit about the darkness and my own experience with the closest I ever came to taking my life. And I talk about what that was like, and I talk about the light that came after, and I start the book with a scene from my life, and I go back to that scene and answer that question kind of. And so I needed to split it up in parts because I feel like it builds. You have to first of all, if you don't think it's important, part 1 is to show you why it's important, what it's all about, the rallying cry. And then you have to help yourself first. If you want to do this, you can't do this if you're empty. I know. Like when I couldn't tie my shoes, I couldn't do a lot to help other people, and that's okay. There's a time and season for these things. But then we get the tools and we get the motivation of this is why you are perfect to do this. And then we come around to, this is why it matters, because it's saving lives. And I say this a little bit in my in my introduction. I mean, not everybody who feels unseen is going to have mental health problems the way that I did. However, worst case scenario is we see suicide rate rising, right? I mean, you know this better than anyone. We see suicide numbers rising. So we are very disconnected as a society. This is something I've been concerned about, obviously, long before COVID, because I wrote most of the book before COVID. And now especially, people need to be seen so badly. So worst case scenario is someone commits suicide from not feeling like people have compassion and are connecting with them. Best case scenario is a pretty unsatisfactory life. So this book is for the people that want to help. I had to go back and forth. Do I want to write this to the person that needs seen, or am I writing it to the person that doesn't know what to do? And in the end, I decided I'm writing it to the person that doesn't know what to do. But within that, I'm seeing the person because I'm showing them how to do it for themselves. Yeah. And then to take that to the other people. So I like to think it's for everybody, but...
That's awesome. So what type of comments have you been getting?
Good ones.
Good ones.
I don't know, maybe the mean ones. Maybe they would choose just not to say anything. No. I've had a lot of people reach out to me and say, this is just changing how I mother in general. Mm-hmm. This is changing how I see people. Some of the endorsements in the front of the book might be people you recognize. One of my big supporters has been Jenny Taylor from North Ogden. You know Jenny. Yeah. This has been something that she has been so behind. And, I have a Paul Jenkins. He has Live on Purpose TV. He has a really popular YouTube channel. Clint Pulver, he's a popular professional drummer and speaker. And Ty Bennett, different people that have their own businesses and companies that are saying, yes, this is true and this helps in a business setting. Mm-hmm. So I think that everybody, it was interesting to write a book that I feel like everybody needs, and I say that with humility because I need it. I don't know how many times I've had to sit in the tub and listen to my own episode on self-compassion because I'm like, Julie, that's you saying it with your voice and you're not doing it right now. I didn't write this book because I have it all figured out. I have this written because I know what I need. Yeah. And I know what I needed and I know what's working for me now. That does not mean I do it every day. I mean, my husband can tell me, right? We've decided that's a low blow that he's not allowed to use when he's like, you wrote a book about seeing people and you don't see me. We've just decided you don't get to use that one because every time I'm just like, oh, no, you didn't. Like, I'm doing my best.
That's when you throw a flag, right?
Yeah. No, below the belt, Rob. You can't do that.
So,
It's true. I don't always see people the way that I should. And that's what progression's for.
Well, how much healing has come from writing it?
Oh, it's been good.
Yeah.
It's been
Isn't
good.
that interesting how it happens, just to get it out?
Well, and the first draft I wrote of this, I think it was for me because it was a lot to do with me. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty intense. I remember my sister read it, and I remember she read the first chapter and she's like, I feel like you could be more descriptive. Like, what did the depression feel like? Like, tell me. And then by the end of the book, she was like, whoa. Okay, I take it all back. That was so heavy of a book. And she said, as your sister, I'm so grateful I got to read it because I didn't know all this. And now I do. And I feel like I see you differently. And I know what you've been through more. But we decided I kind of wrote it for me. And it wasn't for the reader. And that's okay. And that was a tough pill to swallow. Because I kind of had to redo a lot of stuff. But I wanted this to be for other people, not memoir of Julie Lee. That's not what it's supposed to be about. Yeah. And so I think there was some healing that came from getting all that out first. And then being able to take the needed parts from that and make it about the reader. That was healing to serve that way. And with this book, I'll just say it's been an incredible opportunity because there are so many people I want to help. But because of my own limitations and my own needed boundaries for my mental health, because once again, who do I have stewardship over? It's over my kids and my husband. Well, not over my husband, you know what I'm saying? But my family.
Yes.
And myself, and keeping myself here and in a healthy place. I can't be everybody's therapist. I am a safe place. But sometimes there's people I want to help that need help, and I know I can't save them, and that's hard for me. But I can hand them this book and say, this is my heart, and this is what's helped me. Or I can send them to my podcast, I See You. Maybe check out this episode, see what you think. And I can serve that way and keep myself safe. Yeah. And that alone has been such an honor and just opportunity that I'm so grateful every day to have. That's been the most healing part of having this book, I think, is being able to serve other people.
I love it. So there's one thing that I thought of when I first got the book. I remember when it came from Amazon. I'm sitting there and I go, it's interesting though. We want people to see us, but where do we see everything about everybody? It's on social media, right? Mm-hmm. And the part that we're seeing isn't reality.
No. Yeah.
We're seeing what people want us to see about them. Mm-hmm. And then there's all this baggage that we're not seeing, and everything
it's
that's
like me
going on.
When I say that when Rob said in a fight, like, you're not seeing me right now. Like, I'm not posting that on Instagram. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't be doing it here, But we need that reality check. Mm-hmm.
But
that's real life.
What do you think do you think that's causing a problem with social media and the fact that we're not really seeing the person, we're seeing only what they want to have seen? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think that social media has escalated so fast, and I just don't think we quite know what to do with it.
Yeah.
It's got some really great things about it. I also think that we are like little children trying to figure out how to work a new toy, and it's messing with us in some ways. Mm-hmm. It's being really destructive for a lot of people. And yet we know, oh my gosh, so much good has come from, this book, it was a connection with the president of the publishing company through social media. Yeah. So I'm not bailing on social media anytime soon, but I need boundaries because when I'm on it scrolling my depression, it's coming. Yeah. My anxiety, it's coming. And so we need strict boundaries. So I think that's why it's so important with kids. If me and I'm I'm young, I'm only 30, but me as a 30-year-old, if I have a hard time keeping my boundaries with social media, there's no way my kids are going to have social media accounts too young. Yeah. And that's not to diss on anyone. It's just they don't know what to do with it. No. Because I'm having to keep myself in check, with my husband. Yeah. Because it feeds my depression. So it needs to be used as a tool. We should be, running our own social media account, not having it run us. And I think that there's some concern there.
Yeah. And I think we all have to be able to be seen for who we really are and really what's going on. And so, it's post your good stuff on social media, but you've got to have that safe person or that somebody that you can really lay it out for. And it's got to be somebody that's safe and not somebody that's going to cause further problems. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think that even if you're an introvert, find somebody. Mm-hmm. Everybody needs someone to connect with. We are social creatures, right? Brene Brown, she says that we're hardwired to connect. Mm. And social media for me has been a good place to post some real life stuff. I've posted about when I'm mentally struggling a lot. I'm not doing well. But I also think it's a place for connection as long as that connection leads you to connect in real life too.
Yeah.
Like with the publisher, next week I was sitting in a room with him in real life connecting. And that's great. But if social media becomes a stand-in for human connection, I think we start struggling.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so now where do we see Julie Lee go from here?
I'm finishing up season 2 of my podcast, which you're going to be on, and I'm excited about. I'm finishing up season 2. Hopefully by the end of the year here, we'll hit our 100th episode.
Nice.
And then I have some other projects underway. But I love speaking engagements, and I'm working with some schools to try to get ICU in the schools to help prevent suicide and depression and anxiety. So I don't know. We'll see 2021, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of us don't know exactly what the future holds. I've had so many things canceled.
Yeah.
Like we all have. You just canceled something big, right?
Yeah. And speaking engagements.
Oh,
gone. They're gone.
They're all virtual now. So I'm trying to figure, but so we'll see. But good big things ahead that I'm pretty excited about.
Awesome. So where can people find you?
So my website is julieleespeaks.com.
Okay.
And that's where you can contact me. You can see how to get my bracelet, my book. My book's also on Amazon, of course, and it's on my publisher's website. But all of that can be found on my website julieleespeaks.com.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you coming and being part of this, driving out to Tooele.
Totally.
And hanging out with me.
I was going to do it anyway on a weekend, but then you said a hotel stay. I'm like, shoot.
Yeah.
This would be a little staycation during COVID, little mini vacation for my kids.
Exactly.
They're excited about a hotel room. We don't have to do anything else.
That's right.
They'll jump on the bed.
Just take them in there and have fun.
Yep.
Well, so you've got Amazon coming to your house every day. I know I've seen the trucks pulling up, pulling out. So
I have too.
So
that's how we're all shopping.
So get on there, check out this book, ICU by Julie Lee. Go ahead and get a copy of it and make it happen. I mean, Prime's there in 2 days? Just make it happen.
And
get it going.
Christmas, I think Christmas right now, what's been neat is to be able to sign these. And I do, if you want to message me, I'll sign them and send them to you from my home because signings have been canceled.
Yeah.
That's totally something I'm willing to do. And there's just people that need to be seen right now during Christmas. I think that this could be a really positive thing for them. I really mean that.
100%. And, with everybody being at home more and going out less, you got time to get in that book. Yeah. And so check it out. Now, every time we button up this podcast, I do mention to everyone, if you're in a spot that's scaring you and you're having thoughts that are troubling and you kind of don't know where to go from here, if you don't have that safe person, that person that's seeing you, reach out to the Lifeline. Give them a call at 1-800-273-8255. They will answer that call day or night, 365 days a year. And it'll be a licensed clinical social worker that actually can help you get through what you're going through. It's the next best thing to having somebody that you can sit down face to face and have that discussion with. But please don't do it alone. Don't isolate. That makes it so much harder. Drags out the process of healing so much. You've just got to get that conversation out. Tell somebody that you can trust or call the Lifeline.
And can I say something?
Yeah.
That I have called that hotline in my past. And it's true, everything you're saying. And there's none of us are above that.
No.
Do it. It's help.
And you know what? It's totally anonymous.
Yeah.
You have the right to tell them your name or don't tell them your name.
Yeah.
But have that conversation because we need you here. You may say, well, you don't know me. I might not know you, but you know what? everybody brings something to the table. Everybody's here with a purpose. Don't end before you find out what your purpose is. We need you here. So we love you. Thanks for coming back week after week. I know you don't come for me, but you come for the guests. And if you do come for me, call a hotline. You need more help than you might think. So, but anyhow, we really do appreciate you, and we appreciate the fact that you're sharing these podcasts. If you know somebody that needs to hear Julie's story, share it. Share it and make sure it gets out to the people that need to hear it. That's how we kind of get these podcasts heard. Please check her podcast out. It's amazing. It's called I See You. So I think that'll about wrap it up tonight, but we want to thank our sponsors. Again, GTM Builders. If you're thinking about building, check them out. Come out to the Tooele Valley and see what it offers. We're just 35 minutes from downtown, 20 minutes to the airport, an hour from my hometown of Orem. So, come out and check out Tooele. And if you're thinking about buying or selling anywhere, check out A. Warner Homes Real Estate. Give them a call at 801-867-5078. And again, if you're coming out, come out and check out the Comfort Inn and Suites in Tooele. We thank them so much for being part of this and providing a place for Julie to hang out tonight with her kids. They're going to jump on the bed and make...
Hopefully they don't break anything.
They won't break anything. Don't let them touch the Porsche in the lobby.
Oh, yeah. I did see that car, and I was like, oh, okay, it's a little too expensive, kids. You're not going with that.
That's for the racetrack out here. So, yeah. But if you're thinking about trying to find a hotel out here in Tooele County, check them out at 801-250-3600. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week. Take care.